When Jesus was asked to identify the most important law, he immediately responded with, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." That's Matthew 22, verse 37. He was quoting a long-standing command from God that had been spoken through Moses and recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. Loving God with all our heart, our mind, and soul means that our commitment to God is paramount and manifests in total dedication to Him in every aspect of our being. Moses had explained, "You shall do as the Lord your God has commanded you, not deviating to the right or to the left, but totally obeying God always." That's Deuteronomy 5:32. Jesus agreed. But then Jesus added a second command, which he said was like the first command to love and obey God. He said, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." That's Matthew 22, verse 39. This directive had also been long established and was recorded at Leviticus 19, verses 18 and 34, where God directed his people to love those within their own community and also to love strangers they encountered. The Apostle Paul reiterated this principle. He said, "Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law." That's Romans 13:8. Clearly, these instructions are foundational to godly living, and they apply to us today. Knowing that God has commanded us to love one another, why do we see strong divisions and even hatred within our communities and our nation? And why are there serious fissures breaking bonds of love even within the church today? Confusion abounds on what it means to love one another. Sometimes our attempts at love are misunderstood or are misdirected. It's as if we're not even speaking the same language sometimes. A Christian counselor, Gary Chapman, has a theory about that. He maintains that our attempts to communicate love are made through words and actions, but are often misunderstood because each of us has different backgrounds and different perspectives that affect our interpretation of those words and actions. Love means different things to different people. And to complicate things even further, the word love has many meanings. Therefore, let's consider what was meant by the directive that Jesus spoke to love one another. The word translated as love, used by Jesus in Matthew 22:39, is the same concept as was articulated back in Leviticus 19, verses 18 and 34. After all, Jesus had been asked to identify the greatest commandment in the law, and the law that would have been being discussed at the time was the law that was stated in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, because that's what constituted the Jewish law. Jesus stated that the Jewish law to love one another was like the Jewish law to love God, and those two principles were the basis upon which all the law and the prophets rested. That's Matthew 22, verse 40. The same Hebrew word is used in the directive to love God with all our being at Deuteronomy 6:5, and the instruction to love other people in Leviticus 19, verses 18 and 34. That Hebrew word is aheb. Abram's Biblical Dictionary explains that the word aheb is less concerned with the emotions of love and more concerned with the mechanism of being attracted or focused on someone or something. And loving with all our heart, mind, and soul would mean to love with great intensity, focusing our interest on the object of our love. Similarly, the Greek word translated in the New Testament as love, when Jesus was identifying the most significant law, was agapeo. Agape love involves selfless acts that are undertaken in the best interests of another. It is giving without any expectation of receiving anything in return. Agape love is not based on emotions, but is activated by selflessness and the best interests of others. At the end of his ministry on earth, Jesus issued a new commandment, and that was love one another as I have loved you. That's John 13, verse 34. The word love in that passage is also translated from the Greek word agapeo. Jesus demonstrated selfless love. He was commanding us to likewise act selflessly for the benefit of others. The form of love promoted by Jesus and required by God, therefore, is a love that is selfless, that freely acts in keeping with God's mandates and is in the best interests of others. That kind of love is a decision. It is not an emotion or a feeling. Exercising love, the kind of love that Jesus directed, requires us to make a conscious decision to work for the benefit of others. See, for example, Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4. In exercising that kind of love, we must decide what is in the best interests of others. Determining what is in the best interest for someone else is complicated by human factors. Some believe they are acting beneficially toward others if their actions generate positive feelings. But love, as directed by Jesus, is not defined by feelings. Instead, love is a decision designed to serve another person. Here is where our attempts to love one another can go off the rails. We see division in the church today on this very point. Some say, for example, we are directed to love one another and therefore we should affirm lifestyles or actions of others even when they deviate from the directives of Scripture because affirming them feels loving. But love as directed by Jesus is not a feeling. It is a decision to abide wholeheartedly in God. Promoting sin may feel loving at the moment, but such actions are not in the best interests of the soul. Living contrary to God's moral standards has devastating eternal effects. See, for example, 1 Corinthians 6:9, or Revelation 21:8, or Revelation 22, verse 15. So as we consider what Jesus meant by his directive to love one another, reflect on these questions for introspection, if you will. Question number 1, Jesus did not come to the earth to abolish any of God's moral standards. Read Matthew 5, verse 17. What biblical teachings of morality are being rejected in today's culture? Question number 2, what is the loving response to deviations from biblical standards of morality? And question number 3, what challenges do we face by speaking God's truth in love? Jesus plainly stated that he did not come to earth to abolish the law. He came to fulfill it. Read Matthew 5:17. Moreover, he directed that none of God's moral standards are to be disregarded. Actions contrary to God's principles of morality can have eternal negative effects. Matthew 5:19 and 20. Christians are called to speak truth in love. That's Ephesians 4:15. Instead of taking the feel-good course of telling people that immoral actions are okay, we are responsible for promoting God's kingdom standards. Our challenge is to talk about God's moral laws in such a way as to encourage people to change course and adhere to godly standards. That is the loving thing to do. Jesus has called us to love one another. That calling requires us to consciously decide to follow God's moral principles in life and to encourage others to do so as well. Lord, help us. Help us to love as you have called us to love.